All right, so I will hand it over to you, Rodney, to jump in for your session, and we'll get everybody on board. Thank you.
Thank you for having us as part of this great conference. I appreciate the opportunity for the Employment Specialist team to share some of our tips and tricks and what we do to incorporate IPS when we are going out in job developing. I want to introduce Mary Horton, who is one of our employment specialists, and also with us is Diego Rios. And we have one more who will hopefully be on as soon as she can figure out some technical challenges. So we figured the best way to go about this would be for me to fire off some questions to my fellow panelists. As you all know, there are 8 principles for IPS, so I've kind of put together some questions that incorporate those 8 principles. So I'll share some questions with them, and then we can have a little bit of dialogue, and we will try and keep some time at the end for questions. So with that, let's get started. And
sounds fantastic.
The first question will go to Mary. And here we go, Mary. A critical aspect to IPS is rapid job search. With rapid job search, the goal is to begin direct face-to-face contact with employers within the first 30 days of our meeting with clients. In order to incorporate rapid job search, our program has done away with all vocational evaluations, situational assessments, work readiness groups, and the like. So Mary, let me ask you, how has removal of those sorts of tools impacted your clients and their chances for success?
Well, it's been pretty dynamic, and I see we have, 110 participants, no pressure. So I'm happy to answer these questions. Well, rapid job search means exactly that, honoring the client's preferences and interests in a non-judgmental way. The old way of doing job development, have clients jump through all kinds of hoops, prove that they really want a job. This is demeaning and disrespectful. And the way that, quite frankly, that's the old way I did job development before I came to the county and learned about the IPS model. It's a work-first model, meaning individualized placement and support. Individual, not treating people as a group, but working with people individually, what they want, what they need. So I focus on the individual. I was an old dog, but I learned some new tricks with IPS, and people are placed faster and they're happier, in their jobs. An example is a client, for instance, in the old way, a client might say, I want a job in a doctor's office. Great, I can give you a job. How about this? In an enclave where you fold pizza boxes and get paid a piece rate. Are we honoring a client's preferences by doing that? No. Do we think a client would be happy with this job? No. Would a client be discouraged with this job that's being offered? Yes. And so we're already behind the 8 ball when we're not listening to the client. So with classes and assessments, enclaves, they in themselves might take 30 days to complete. And we still are no closer to getting a person a job. An example with IPS is within 30 days, we're already completing detailed career profiles with the type of job they want and need. We're developing a resume. We're meeting employers, setting up interviews, fielding job offers, and many of the clients are placed within 30 to 60 days, which in the old model, you're still doing assessments. So I have really bought into the IPS, I'm proud to say, and I've had some good results. An example is Sandy, not her real name. She had a job commuting 25 miles a day. She was monolingual in Vietnamese, and she was spending too much money on commuting and not getting enough hours at her job. As I was saying, she spoke only Vietnamese, so I had to find a Vietnamese restaurant. I found a restaurant within a 15-minute commute where everyone was bilingual in English and in Vietnamese. 6 months later, she's still there. She's employed. She's actually making more money and commuting a lot less. So that's my experience with IPS. Perhaps my colleagues could opine on some of their experiences, but IPS works. Work first, and the recovery comes as they're engaged.
That's a fantastic example, Mary. That's fantastic, I think.
Thank you for that, Mary. I appreciate it. Want to mention really quick, our fourth panelist, Veronica, looks like she's logged on. If there's any way we can highlight her, that'd be awesome. But until then, we will keep going. And then, with the rapid job search, my experience has really been that, a lot of our clients have, they've never worked or they haven't worked in a long time. And, sometimes their excitement about work, it cannot last sometimes. So it's great if we're able to get somebody in front of an employer as quickly as possible. We want to get them involved and let them know that we're not going to have them sitting on the sidelines for months and months, waiting, taking tests and the like. I think getting them going and let them know that we're ready to move forward with them is one way to keep them excited about the process. Just been my expression, my impression. Let's go to the second question, and this question is going to be for Diego. Another important aspect of IPS is our adherence to zero exclusion. This means that people are not excluded on the basis of readiness, diagnosis, symptoms, substance abuse challenges, or anything else. So Diego, can you share an example of a time that exemplifies why zero exclusion is such an important piece to IPS?
Well, I think this part of the IPS program is fantastic. I've used it for 30 years and it works a lot. One thing about, I have to first start with a comment concerning the zero exclusion. The zero exclusion principle ensures that a client maintains their dignity, dreams, and self-determination. Too many times we see in this field of social services, there's all these other folks who make the decisions for individuals who have quote unquote disabilities, either physical or mental. So they're always making these decisions for the individuals, yet they're excluding the individual's opinion of when they want to work, where they want to work, or what they want to do with their lives. One thing about the zero exclusion thing that I like most of all, it takes that away. It takes away the marginalization with our clients who have been traditionally very marginalized, and it gives them the power to determine whether or not they want to work, where they want to work, and what they want to do with themselves. So I feel very, very strongly about this particular zero exclusion. You can't tell my excited voice and certainly my excited mannerism. I'm very excited about just employment in general. I've been doing it my entire life, and it's just fantastic. Then the method that works most effectively is the IPS method. And in terms of a story, I do have a pretty good story that it just recently did come up. I won't use real names or anything like that, or locations or anything like that, because I have to protect the innocent. Just being funny there. Yeah. Anyway, just within the past maybe 6 or 7 months, I was in a meeting with some clinicians over at some place in the East Bay, and a certain client's name came up. And they mentioned that this client had a drug abuse problem, had never shown up to any meetings, and was just terrible to work with. Yet I'd received word that this client wanted to work. So during the meeting, I mentioned to these clinicians, expressed an email to me that he wanted to work. And if he wants to work, I'll get him a job. Plain and simple. If he wants to work, we'll get him a job. It's plain and simple. And the clinicians were very skeptical. And they kept on telling me, in fact, one mentioned specifically, this guy's a drug addict, don't bother with him. Another mentioned, this guy is flaky as heck, don't bother with him. Of course, I didn't take that, I took it with a grain of salt. And I mentioned to clinicians, again, I use the IPS method in my types of job development, and I will follow through with that. If the client wants a job, I will try my best to get him a job. So at that point, I sort of departed. I was very polite to the clinicians. I said, I politely disagree with you. I'm going to work with this client no matter what. And one clinician nearly told me flat out, don't waste your time with this guy. So I told myself, well, again, there's a zero exclusion thing, which is very powerful. So I contacted that client after, and I made an appointment on the phone And he showed up to the appointment on the time, on the dime, with a crew cut. So, I mean, this guy looked like he cleaned himself up for the appointment. Anyway, I thus scheduled 3 more times to meet with this individual so we could complete the vocational profile, which is very important. That's a whole nother matter. Every single meeting that I met with this guy, he showed up on the time, on the dime, in the exact same spot. So I was thinking in the back of my mind, I was told left and right not to waste time with this guy. He doesn't even show up to meetings. He's showing up to 3 meetings so far. On the time, all the time, on the dime, there. So not only ready and willing to work, he had a crew cut and was all cleaned up. How about that? So following that, I talked to the client, and he mentioned to me, I did not mention to him, that he specifically wanted to get a job because he wanted to help reduce his own drug addiction. Now, I didn't bring it up to him. He brought it up to me. I mean, I was sitting there talking to him, and he goes, Rios, I've had this problem with drug addiction, and I think if I get a job, I think it'll help me reduce my addiction to drugs. Again, I was thinking in the back of my mind is, I didn't bring it up to him. He brought it up to me. Why isn't he bringing this up to the clinicians? So I had a discussion with him. I told him I don't judge you. I don't judge you or your drug abuse or whatever, but just to let you know that if your drugs get out of control and I feel it endangers your life, I may have to step in and mention controlling your drug abuse, or it affects your work. I may have to step in and say, this is affecting your work. But again, I don't judge you and your drug abuse or anything else. I don't judge you. And he seemed to really like that. He told me specifically also that he felt really judged by the mental health professionals. That's why he didn't show up to any of their meetings. I mean, I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. If I was showing up to people that I felt judged me in a sort of a negative way, I wouldn't want to show up at any meetings either. Heck. So anyway, later on, I talked to the client, and I met later, even a little later on, with the clinicians. And I told them that this guy had made not 3, but 4 meetings with me. He'd been there on the time, all the time, on the dime. And he brought up to me that he was wanted to use work as a form of reducing his own drug abuse. And they seemed aghast. They didn't see how that was even possible. I mean, they didn't see it. They just seemed completely aghast. I mean, how could this be possible? Well, it's all documented. He showed up to all the meetings. I mean, and he even brought up the drug abuse situation. I didn't bring it up at all. So, Rodney, you wanted to say something, or? Well, anyway.
Excellent. Well, no, I appreciate that story, Diego. I think it really highlights, what the reason that we have zero exclusion. I mean, for me, I would have to admit that zero exclusion is something that I had to come to appreciate over time.
Sure.
When I began my work as an employment specialist, I had my own thoughts and ideas about who was ready and who wasn't and who was prepared. And if I look back, I was usually wrong. I was usually wrong. And I have come to really appreciate zero exclusion because people deserve their opportunity and they don't need us to let them know whether or not they're ready or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I wanted to ask, I think we have Veronica on the phone. Veronica, are you also here with us?
Yeah, I'm here now. I was having such technical difficulties. I apologize.
Excellent. We don't see you, but it's good to have your voice. And I am going to pose the next question to you. Is that all right?
Yes.
So the next question is, Veronica, can you talk a little bit about how you incorporate additional mental health services to help clients find and maintain work, and also talk a little bit about the importance of the involvement of a mental health team?
Okay, thank you, Rodney. Well, IPS and mental health services are integrated. Employment specialists are a part of a multidisciplinary team composed of psychiatrists, case managers, clinicians, rehab counselors, nurses, as well as, the benefits counselor for the work incentives aspect of the services, specifically for those who receive Social Security and/or Medi-Cal benefits. So every week we meet with our clinical team, we discuss shared caseloads, and aside from that, there's an open communication with the team as well, whenever it is needed. The input of each expert is vital. The involvement of the involvement of the employment specialist is valued as well. So the team works together to help with employment. For example, the psychiatrist may help adjust medication so that clients won't feel side effects when on the job. Case managers may help re-engage clients. They can tell us more about the client's strengths, skills, challenges, what coping skills can be utilized. The expertise of the clinical team is of high importance for the success of the client in employment, which here employment is believed to be one of the most effective interventions to mental health challenges.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. The expertise and the experience of the mental health team. I mean, I can share a brief example from my own work with clients. I had a client that I was working with, and when we first started working together, we sat down and I asked her a little bit about, what she wants to do. And she said she'd like to do janitorial work. So I said, okay, let's look for a janitorial job. But a couple of days later, I had a conversation with her case manager, who had known her far longer than I had. And the case manager said, yeah, she could do janitorial work, that she's done that in the past, but she was afraid that she was using that as a little bit of a comfort zone. She said, this client is far more capable, and she's able to do a lot of different things. She's just a little afraid. So she asked me to challenge the client a little bit. She said, challenge her and, see if you can dig a little deeper. So the next time I met with the client, I said, well, let's talk a little bit about, your hobbies and what you like to do. And the client, she shared with me that she spent a lot of time caring for her ailing grandmother and that she really enjoyed it. And we talked about it, and I asked her if she'd ever given some thought to doing in-home care work. And she said she had never thought about it, but she would love it. She just never connected the fact that she taking care of her grandmother would be preparing her for that. So we looked around for in-home care work. We found her a job, and she's still doing that work. This is multiple years ago, and she still enjoys it. And the point is, though, I would never have pushed her that way until after I talked to the case manager. And incorporating, some people from the mental health team made a real difference. I could have found her a job doing janitorial work, but I'm quite certain she wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as what she's doing right now. Mm-hmm. So I was glad I was able to talk to the case manager and kind of make some changes in our plan. So with that being said, let's go to the next question. Next question will go to Mary. So okay. Mary, IPS tries to focus on client strengths and preferences. What does it look like for an employment specialist to be strength-based? And why is it important to focus on client preferences?
Okay, well, client preferences make the difference. If we're meeting the client where they're at and what they want to do, they seem more committed to the job, they'll stick with the job, they last longer on the job. So strengths are important. Sometimes I hear what a client cannot do. I hear that a lot. Well, they can't do this, they can't do that. I want to give you an example of Philip, not his real name. He had cerebral palsy, he had a walker and mobility problems, and he had a criminal record of assault on top of that. Philip worked with another agency, and all they can see is what he couldn't do. I delved deeper, and I found out that Philip was an honor student. He had lots of interests. He was only 28 years old. He never worked. He completed high school, enjoyed science and art and music, was a budding artist who actually sold his work. He never worked, but he sold his work, loved math. And so we went to a lot of employers. Unfortunately, many of the employers saw the walker and they were kind to us and said, apply online, but they didn't bite. But that didn't stop me. The more employers you see, the better your chances of a client getting hired.
Absolutely. Yeah, you said it. Smart.
That's right.
Yep. You got it.
And it also just keeps the client encouraged that you're not giving up, you're partnering with the client. So I was pleased one day when I walked into a dollar store And the manager, she didn't say, oh, okay, we'll consider it, apply online. Her response was, when can he work? Can he work weekends? Bottom line is, she was having problems getting people to show up on weekends, which was the height of their business. And she just needed someone with a pulse who basically knew math, who would show up, get along with people. And guess what? My client, Philip, was moved right up the line. She said, she didn't even have him apply online. She just said, have him come in on Tuesday and show his hire documents. It was that quick. And the interesting thing is, his walker actually became a bonus, because to alleviate standing, he could sit in his walker at the cashier station and do the transactions. He became a great employee. He developed a lot of friendships. And one thing that I worked with him on was paratransit, because he lived in a board and care home and he was stranded. He would have to get some special transportation. Well, I jumped up a line, and we went to the paratransit agency. They sailed him right through for paratransit. They saw the walker, they saw the disabilities, and he was able to get to work on his own, paying a small fee, $4 each way. And he would arrive there not only on time, but early. And the employer just loved it. And the board and care manager, they were, kind of looking askance at this, because Philip never worked and they didn't expect he could work. And suddenly Philip has another life, a life outside of the board and care, where he's able to be a human being like all of us, with hopes and dreams and wishes. And I remember taking him to work when we were initially interviewing, and he pointed to an apartment building. He says, I want to live in that apartment building. I said, well, you could do it, just save up your money. And so anyway, that was a great encouragement to me, a great encouragement to him, and a great encouragement to the board and care staff, that he wasn't as disabled as everyone was treating him. And, had never had a job before, but now gainfully employed. 2 months later, he's still going strong.
Another fantastic success.
That is
Fantastic.
awesome. And Marriott, in my experience, the clients that I work with, they already have a clear idea of what their shortcomings are. The world doesn't let them forget what all their challenges are. They're aware of them. But what we try and do when it comes to being strengths-based is reminding them that they have some talents and they have some skills to share, and that they can do more. So, in my experience, being strengths-based is just really reminding them that, you're a lot more than what, the challenges that the world has pointed out for you already. Let's look at some of your strengths. Let's look at some of the things that will make you a valuable employee somewhere.
Yeah, and another thing I would like to add is that they said he never worked, but yet he did cash transactions when he sold his artwork. So guess what? I led with that he was an artist and he sold his artwork doing cash and credit transactions. So suddenly it wasn't just he went to school, he went to a vocational program, but he actually had a job. So I keyed off of that, and that helped him land that job at the dollar store.
Fantastic story. Fantastic.
That's great.
So that's all I got to say on that one.
Okay, looks like Rodney is frozen for some reason. Chris, do you want to spotlight me?
Hi, Teresa.
Hi guys, my dynamic team of employment specialists here. Let's see, there's so many questions to ask because there's so much talent here. So why don't you guys share a story about when you needed to look for a very specific job for a person?
Oh, I can. Do I get a chance? Well, here goes a
Absolutely.
specific one. I deal with a lot of individuals who have some physical and mental disabilities. Just recently, I received a client who's an elderly female in her late 60s, and she could only use one leg. So I had to do job searches for, and also that she didn't have a whole lot of technical abilities or technical skills. The only thing she could do is pretty much operate a phone and sit. So with that particular skill set, I mentioned to her, I have a couple of things in mind. I have to locate jobs in which she doesn't have a whole lot of movement, doesn't have to move very much. And not only that, their technical skills aren't necessarily going to be necessary. So what I did is I did my face-to-face meetings out in the community. I located a jolly jumper place, believe it or not, where they have little kids jump around. And in the desks, sitting job, I talked to, happened to meet the owner, actually owner of the place. And he mentioned, hey, I really need somebody. Just sit here and monitor the kids running back and forth. They don't have to know how to use a computer. They don't have to know how to use a phone. They just have to sit here and sort of watch the kids a little bit. So I said, I have just the worker for you. But then at that same time, I went to a large department store and I met the manager and he said, I really need workers here. And I really need someone here in the front part of my store to sort of monitor people coming in and out and making sure they're not ripping me off. So I said, I have someone for you. Well, as it turns out, this woman got both the jobs and she chose to work for the large department store in which she has to, namely, she doesn't have to move too much. She only has one good leg and she can just sit and monitor and be friendly with people, which is what she's best at. So again, everybody's happy. The store got their light security. She gets out in the community and talks to people and is a little more social rather than being cooped up in her group home care all the time. And again, they're not exploiting or disusing her or actually having her do things which are out of her physical bounds or anything like that. She just has to sit. So in a sense, everybody is happy. Employer happy, she happy, me happy. Hey.
Thank you, Diego. That's great. That's a great story. Veronica, I bet you have another example of that when you had to look for a very specific job for someone.
Well, mine, as far as my experience, I have this client who wanted, a job very, very close to his home. So I did my job search and I found, and he wanted stocking tasks. So I did the job search, I did my job development, and I found, the supermarket, which is literally just 5 minutes away from his home. So I spoke to the manager, and the manager wanted to meet our client. So I went ahead and brought our client to this manager and introduced them to each other. And, right away, our client was given the new hire packet and was actually hired on the spot and started working there.
Wow.
Which is, it's so close to his home. Literally, he can walk.
Wow.
Fantastic.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That's just a fantastic work on your side and also fantastic work.
Yeah,
so Mary,
distance actually can deter. So, I make it a point most of the time to find a job for clients as close to their home as possible. Okay. Thanks.
Wow, sounds great one. That's a great story.
Mary, we have to give you a chance to answer this question because I know you probably have like dozens.
He's
and
chomping at the
dozens,
bit.
right?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's one I'm thinking of, Sam, not his real name. He was a person with a violent criminal record. And, I talked with my supervisor and I said, quite frankly, I'm a little afraid to meet him. And my supervisor explained that he's in a special program. He has medication, and the crimes that he committed was when he wasn't on medication. So I took my supervisor's advice to heart, and I went to meet with the client at the office, and he was as kind and sweet as he could possibly be. When I shook hands with him, he held my hand like this and said, "So happy to meet you." And
wow.
And I almost wanted to break out in tears. I mean, it was he was totally different. And unfortunately, he had such a heinous record, not guilty by reason of insanity, that, you know, no one would touch him. So anyhow, I worked with Sam. He had a rather rough appearance. He wore a cap low on his brow. He looked like a gang member. He wore baggy pants. So I worked with him, and he was open to me working with him. I replaced his baseball cap with an English cap. We got rid of his baggy clothes. We got some clothes that were closer fitting, gave him a belt, brought his pants up so they weren't sagging, gave him a couple of polo shirts from the Goodwill store, and one of them said something like Summit Medical. So he looked like a doctor, for heaven's sakes, when he went in to apply for jobs. And he was a person who got up really early in the morning. He really enjoyed getting up early. So we found a place on the bus route close to where he lived from his board and care. It was a Burger King, and they needed somebody to come in early in the morning, clean up the parking lot, empty the garbage cans, clean up the dining area, and then he would go home for the rest of the day. They only needed him a few days a week. And the thing is, I kind of have tears in my eyes because, you know, I'm not even with him anymore. He's been discharged off of my caseload. He's still working there. He's still working at Burger King. And here's the thing. He lost weight. He stopped smoking. He got some false teeth because he didn't have teeth through the Department of Rehab. And you wouldn't even recognize him now. He's a totally different person. And I heard somebody say something that kind of struck me about work is, let's see, where is it at? Work is a part of recovery, not a reward for recovery. And
wow.
that, you know,
Fantastic.
I like that.
Fantastic.
yeah, it struck me too. And that's the thing. It's a work first model. And the whole world needs to know about this. You know, I know that we're trailblazers here in California doing this, but everybody needs to know this. And people with disabilities, mental health disabilities, you know, intellectual disabilities, if there's a job developer who can piece together a job, there's always success. There's always success when we honor the client.
Fantastic, Mary. That's a fantastic statement.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Really
Thank you
beautiful.
for that, Mary. I appreciate it.
Really beautiful statement.
The focus is always on the strengths of the client.
Exactly.
That's right. The strength is what you're selling. That's right. Rodney, I'm going to hand it back to you now that you're not frozen.
I apologize for my technical challenges.
That's
Oh,
okay.
you're not
Thank you,
frozen.
Teresa,
You
for
unfroze
stepping in. I
Rodney.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I would encourage you to, when you have these really great questions, is let each one of your panelists respond to the question, because I'm sure they all have lots of juicy experience to share.
Juicy experience.
I'll give them all an opportunity. So let's look at the next question. And for the next one, we'll start off with Diego, but like Teresa just said, we'll give everybody else a chance as well.
Sure.
So Diego,
away.
can you share with us the ways that you go about supporting a client once they've already found a job? And what do you do if a client is fired or consistently loses jobs?
Okay, to answer the first part of your question, as many of you know, I'm probably the most enthusiastic job developer in the world. Probably am.
No, I don't
First
think
thing-
so. I'm enthusiastic.
Well, not as enthusiastic as me. I'm crazy.
So am I.
Anyway,
Okay, well, I'm
An
not crazy.
enthusiasm challenge.
well, the first thing I do when a client receives a job is I congratulate them. I say, wow, man, you got the job. And they just get all excited and I get all excited. I even tell the client after they've received a job, in case this doesn't work out, well, we can always find you another job. So I always give them a sort of a cushion a little bit if that job doesn't work out. So first thing I do is congratulate the client. Second thing I do is I make sure to find out the client's hours if I don't really know them, and I drive them to the first couple of days of work. Often when you place a client in a job, one of their biggest obstacles is just making it there to the first day of work due to their nervousness or whatnot. So I drive them to the first day of work. Another thing I do during that period of time is I notify their benefits counselor that one of my clients has received a job and it may affect the benefits. Make sure to connect the client with the benefits counselor. That's another thing I do. After that, after a client has been placed, I either call them or come visit them. Yeah, sometimes every day, but often every couple of days, I'll either give a call or come visit them and ask them how things are doing. Even I'll always, sometimes if possible, if the employer will talk to me, ask them how things are doing. And I keep that up for about 2 to 3 weeks. Now, I keep that up for a good part of a month, keeping very, very close. And slowly, as a couple of months pass by, I slowly sort of fade away a little bit. I won't necessarily call every day. I'll call every week. So I'll slowly fade away as a client is being more successful or more entrenched in their job and doing fine. Now, second part of your question had to do with what was I mentioning, a client getting fired?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you do when a client consistently loses jobs?
Well, that happens all the time. When I first started doing job development, I was a very young man. I mean, I even had a full head of hair. I had a black pompadour. And the first thing, I was trained by a very old job specialist. He was in his 70s. And this old man, the first thing he told me is that when you place a client in this particular demographic who have some disabilities, look forward to placing them 4 times before you get a fit. 4 times. So when I place a client in the first job and they haven't worked for many years, I don't anticipate that client lasting more than 30 days. I don't tell them that, but I know that statistics shows, numbers shows they're not going to be there more than 30 days. What I try to do is I make every time that they've either failed at a job or gotten fired at a job, I make it into a learning experience. I always bring it, I don't bring up the negative. I always bring up, well, that job didn't work out. What did we learn from it? Every single time I do that. And let's say that they lasted a week at the job. Okay, that's fantastic. First of all, I bring around the good parts of the job. You lasted more than a week at the job. That's fantastic. Now, let's try to get you another job and see if we can last it a month. But every single time I'm building on the previous job and making whatever they've learned from the job into a success. I'm sort of flopping it over and making it something positive out of a negative. Now, if it happens repeatedly, I often will contact the case manager and find out whether or not there's something in their mental health or something that I don't know about that's important for me to know about before I go place them in another job. But most important is I don't make it a negative, I make it a positive. You make it a learning experience for the client. How about that?
Absolutely. I firmly believe that one of the most important aspects to being a good employment specialist is getting to know your client and being able to turn those jobs that don't work out well into learning experiences rather than setbacks.
Right.
And to do that, if we know the client, then we know when to be a cheerleader or when to be a coach for them or when to be a counselor. What is it that that client needs from me to keep them excited about the next opportunity?
Right.
So we have to continue to make sure that these are learning experience. Veronica, was there something you wanted to share on this topic, Veronica?
Well, yeah, when a client finds a job, when I place a client of mine in a job, the client gets the job, so there's a lot of congratulatory there, and I really empower the client. I acknowledge, recognize, like, great job. I make sure that the client's self-esteem is always built, so the client is more and more confident. I will actually, some clients I will even treat out to lunch, to celebrate the success. And I can see a difference. I can really see the difference in a client's demeanor, whenever they feel recognized, whenever they feel acknowledged. They're just so empowered by that. And, the self-confidence greatly improves whenever I do that. It's very, very apparent to me how,
Wow.
how their self-worth is improving. So
awesome.
And if in case it does not work out with a certain employer, the client loses the job or gets terminated or whatever that may be, it's never a negative, as you've said, Rodney. It's always a learning experience, and the client should actually be given praise just for the intent, just for having that goal. So it's never anything that they should feel that they failed at something, right? So we
That's
just wanna,
fantastic.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, Veronica, absolutely.
Thank you for that,
continue with the
Veronica.
job development, continue revisiting their goals, continue revisiting their interests, and we just keep going.
There
And,
you go.
we will always support. The support is unlimited. For as long as they need us, we're there for them.
Fantastic.
Thank you for that.
Fantastic, Veronica.
Mary, I see you wanting to jump in here.
Yeah, because another important thing that we emphasize when a client gets a job, we ask them if we could have a release of information.
Oh,
So
ROI.
that we hear from them, but we also hear from the employer as to what's going on. So we can troubleshoot more exactly where the points of departure are. Sometimes that takes a little bit of coaxing because they don't want to release the fact that they are a mental health client, even though we don't specify what the illness is, but they feel funny about that. But for the clients that agree to that, that opens up the communication so that, because sometimes the employer doesn't want to be the bad guy. If a person isn't working out, they just want to release them and let them go. And it's kind of like, oh no, Mr. Employer, let's talk about this. And, so we're able to get in there and maybe even save the job. Or if the job doesn't work out, we get more specific information as to what would be a better fit down the road for the client. So the release of information, if we can get it, is very vital.
Yeah, very
Fantastic.
important for us to get the client's approval before we start contacting employers or anyone
that's
else
right.
on their
Oh,
behalf.
sure.
So thank you for mentioning that,
Bringing
Mary.
that up. Yep.
And Mary, we're going to keep it with you for this next question.
That's my reward.
I know this is, yes, indeed. Building relationships with employers is key to being a good employment specialist. So Mary, can you share with us some of the ways you build and strengthen relationships with employers?
Oh yeah, I'd love to. We need to listen to clients and find out the matches with employers. Employers are often buying us as job developers before they even buy into the client. We have to be forthright and adventurous and out there meeting employers. The secret to job placement success is meeting as many viable employers as possible, whether or not they're hiring for job openings. Strive to get in-person meetings, not just talking on the phone, not just applying for jobs for our clients over the internet, but getting in-person meetings, asking open-ended questions. I did a little seminar on sales questions. The last thing in sales you want to ask is a say no question. So what do job developers do traditionally? They go meet an employer, they get a face-to-face with the hiring manager. What's the first question out of their mouth?
Are you hiring?
Are you hiring? Do you have any openings? Oh, hello. That's a say no question. And maybe if they are hiring, they say, can I bring my client in? No. Can I bring my client in today? No. Can I bring them in tomorrow? No. You see, you just box yourself in. So what you have to do is you master those open-ended questions. Tell me, Mr. Employer, if someone really wanted to work here, what are the three most important qualities they have to have in order to be successful? Well, I need a person that shows up for work. I need a person that can get along with people. I need a person who's willing to learn in the job and not say, oh, that's not my job. And then after they get done talking about a litany of different things, then I'll say, you know what, Mr. Employer, I think I might have somebody. And then I don't say, can I bring them in? I say, Mr. Employer, when can I introduce Sebastian to you? He sounds like the type of person you would really like to meet. When would be a good time? Not can you meet him? Will you meet him? When? I I don't know, maybe tomorrow. Great, Mr. Employer, morning or afternoon? Afternoon tomorrow. 1, 2, 3, what's good for you? 3 o'clock tomorrow. Great, I'll bring Sebastian by 3 o'clock tomorrow and we'll see if there's a fit. He just agreed to a job interview and didn't even realize it. Once the client is in front of an employer, suddenly it's a real thing and there might be a fit and there might be a match there. And if nothing, I've made a friend and a connection. So it's important, I'm looking at my notes, it's important to memorize the employer, the decision maker's name. Pete, hey Pete, what do you look for, Pete? Tell me about an exemplary employee, Pete. People love their names, right, Diego? Right, Rodney?
Yes, that's a good point. We sure do love our names.
Yeah, if you say a person's name, they really appreciate you. And I don't know if people saw my little profile, but I'm an elected official, former elected official. I had 18 and a half years in office with the city of Pinole as mayor and council member, 18 and a half years. And one of the things that got me elected, I got elected 5 times. The way I got elected is the first time I would meet someone, I would say their name 3 times in conversation. The first time I meet them, I'd say, oh, that's interesting, Diego. Tell me more about that, Diego. How do you like your job here, Diego? And so when you say a person's name, the first time you meet them, it takes a little discipline because it feels a little awkward at first. When you say it 3 times, it sticks and you will never forget the name.
I like that name, Diego. You're right. That's a good name.
Tricks of the trade from Mary Horton.
That's a great one. I'll definitely use that one.
Yeah. So anyway, develop those relationships. At Christmas time, give them Christmas cards. I bring candy to some of my employers. I send thank you notes after I meet with an employer. I'm an artist on the side, so I make my own little thank you notes. So you can personalize how you develop those meetings. On LinkedIn, try to get an invite, and treat the person, say you want to connect with them professionally. Read Glassdoor, but get some insight into the employer, commit it to memory, put it in your smartphone. And the way I handle my smartphone is I'll put a client's name next to an employer so that I can then, when I'm looking for jobs for Sam, I do a search, Sam, and then the employers come up. I don't have to kind of like reinvent the wheel every time.
Okay.
That's
So,
fantastic.
I think that's about it. Last thing is the reason that people go to us, why employers go to us, is they don't have to pay a fee. If they go to a temp agency, they have to pay a fee. Or they could put an ad on Indeed, that still costs them something. And then they have 50 resumes they have to sort through. So we're the one-stop shop. You can go to us. We don't charge a fee. We pre-screen to your qualifications, and people appreciate that. It saves them time. It saves them money.
Absolutely.
Great
Wonderful points, Mary. That was great. Personally, I think one of the misconceptions about employment specialists is that, you have to have the gift of gab and you have to be able to talk. And, I think the most important thing is probably being able to be a good listener. Mary, you're talking about talking to the employers, and then you have to be able to listen when they're sharing with you what their needs are, what kind of employers they want. The way you get to know them is by listening. And I think in past years, it has been more of a transactional thing with employers than it was an investment. And I think IPS wants employment specialists to make these investments with employers, so that we can build those relationships and they can depend on us, we can depend on them. I got a feeling Diego wants to chime in.
Not quite yet. No, I
Okay.
like what you're saying, or I think it's fantastic.
Well, I think we might have time for one last question. If I'm incorrect, somebody can let me know. So I'm gonna, in this question, I'll start this one off for Veronica, but everybody else can chime in if they want. The IPS model is deeply rooted in the understanding that employment can facilitate recovery and wellness.
Oh, wow.
Can you point to specific examples in your work that would support this belief? So Mary, you want to start off with that one?
Okay.
Oh, I'm
That's all right.
sorry.
I'm on
I
a
said
roll.
Mary, but I meant Veronica. That was for Veronica to start with.
Okay, Veronica, go ahead.
Okay.
I don't see
thank
her
you.
face
Well,
on there, so sorry, Veronica.
Sorry, technical difficulties for some reason. Anyway, well, the implementation of the IPS principles and providing supported employment services to our clients has proven to be very effective when it comes to mental health intervention. The goal is for our clients to feel that they are a part of the community and can, contribute to it just like everybody else and not treated any differently. The IPS approach is very empowering. The focus on competitive jobs, rapid job search, honoring client preferences, the zero exclusion principle, the clinical team integration, the continuous provision of follow-along support, that all of those is of utmost importance. They help build the client's self-esteem, self-confidence, wherein self-doubt is reduced as well. Clients start to believe in themselves. It's a start, to the path of recovery.
Yeah.
So one example I can give is about this very motivated client of mine, with quite profound symptoms. Her anxiety is really very heightened, responses to internal stimuli, are so heightened. So, I made it a point to encourage my client to comply with medications so that her symptoms can be controlled. I regularly conducted role playing and mock interviewing with her for any upcoming job interview she may have. I conducted a job search and follow-ups on applications based on her preferences. I did not give up on her. Despite all those symptoms, I just did not give up on her. We just continued. I continued to provide support until her self-confidence significantly improved and her anxiety was significantly reduced. I encouraged her to believe in herself, and as a result, she was interviewed at Costco, that Costco right across where she lived. So she could actually just literally cross the street and she's there.
Wow.
And that's an employer of her choice too. She wanted to work at that Costco, so she got the job. She was so pleased. She's so proud of herself. Was very grateful for all the support. So and that just opened up the path to her recovery and the path to her goal of reaching self-sufficiency. So it's really a great intervention.
Fantastic
So I'm proud
story.
of her. I'm also very proud of her.
Fantastic story.
For achieving
Opens
that goal.
up the path to her recovery. I agree with that 100%.
Rodney, there's a question in the chat about how do you deal with a person with a mental health diagnosis? How do you make the introduction? Maybe we can answer that really quick.
Well, let me see. Well, do any of you guys want to answer the question at hand first?
Well, at first, I'll answer a little bit of it. At first, I had to have had a discussion with the client as to how much they want disclosed. I mean, I have some clients that just say,
there we go.
Do not disclose my drug addiction. Do not disclose the fact that I have schizophrenia. Just speak to it on very general terms or don't speak to it at all. So, for example, I'm working with a client right now. She has some profound mental health problems, but I don't tell the client, the potential employer, that. I just say that she has medical issues. And we get through with that. So it depends on what the client wants to disclose first and foremost. If they're very profound, often I will attend all the job meetings and the interviews like that with the client and speak to the employer while the hiring process is taking place, and be very clear with the employer that there's some mental health or some physical disabilities which are obvious here. and they're going to have to work with this if it's at all a problem with the job that they're doing. Actually, last couple of people I have placed, we had very obvious problems. For example, I had a guy who had auditory hallucinations, who was hitting his head every now and then and talking to himself. Actually, his employer didn't really care. The only thing this guy, my employer wanted this guy to do was to make bread in the back of his pizza place. And this guy does a fabulous job at that. And it's actually the actual job itself has reduced the mental health issues and the auditory hallucinations this guy has had. But he does still have some episodes of that. Maybe once an hour he'll have an episode. But the employer knows about that. And the employer, to some extent, doesn't care as long as this guy is able to make bread. In fact, this guy has done so well at his job, they extended his hours and it started to affect his Social Security, and we had to reduce his hours. So
Wow.
yeah, you start to work with what you got, but first and foremost, you have to ask the client how much they want to disclose.
That's a great answer, Diego. I appreciate you for that. And we want to let clients know that we're not going to divulge any information that they don't want shared.
Want us to share.
And we also want to let them know that, we're there to support them. And that, us being able to share information, that they approve of with the employer could be, the difference in placing them or not. But we would not share anything that they don't want shared.
Right.
And I see Teresa. Is our time up, Teresa?
No, I'm going to pop in with questions in a minute.
Oh, okay. I had one more question, but would it be better to just go to questions from attendees?
No, go ahead and finish.
Okay. Well, I do have one more question for the team, and this one is for Diego, but everybody else can chime in. Have you ever lost an employer contact because of the behavior of a client? If so, how did you go about keeping that employer interested in future hires?
Absolutely. Believe me, I've worked in this industry a long time for both commercial industry and nonprofit industry. In fact, I used to work for Manpower many years ago, and part of my job every Friday was to contact employers who fired our clients, who had breach of contracts and that sort of stuff. So I'm used to that sort of stuff. When that happens to a particular client, I'll give one story. How about this? I'll give one story. It just very recently happened. I'll show you how I handled it. There was this big security company over in Oakland. Well, I had a security guard who wanted that job. So I talked to the employer, and that employer hired my guy. Now, my guy's a good worker, but I noticed that the lady who was actually doing the interviewing, who's the office manager, was a little bit on the nasty side. She wasn't such a friendly person. In fact, I even told my guy who was getting the job, if this lady is a little nasty to you in the job and you feel uncomfortable, please come tell me. We'll get you another job. So can you still see me now? I seem to have been tuned out. Or you can still see me, right?
Yep.
Okay. I can't see you, but I can see me. Anyway, so I told my client, if this lady is really nasty to you, you don't want the job, please come tell me. I'll get you another job. So we was very clear with that. So a couple of days pass, and the client gets back to me and says, I'm not quite sure about this lady. She doesn't treat me well. So I tell the client, you know what? Bear with you. Let's hold out and see what happens now. Let's work on the job a little bit. And he needs some modifications with his job in terms of its placement and its location of public transportation. So I actually went up to the lady that hired him from this big company and said, hey, you know what? My client really likes this job, but he has a little bit of problem making the transportation. The job is 6 blocks away from where he wants to work, and it's just too long a commute for him to walk. He's an older guy. And the lady who had the hiring body from this security company told me, okay, we'll look to see what we can find, right? So 2 weeks pass, and this lady makes no modification or even an attempt to help my client at all. So my client is struggling with this transportation issue, and I even tell my client, you know what? If they don't give you a better contract, just very, very politely quit the job. I'll even go there with you if you want to, and we'll find you another job. Well, as it turns out, my client doesn't politely do that. He just abruptly stopped showing up to work. So first thing, after about a week or so, that very manager gives me a very irate telephone call of how I told her he was a good client and he didn't show up and blah, blah, blah. Well, part of me said, you know what? I wouldn't want to show up to you either. I mean, but I don't really take sides in this sort of stuff. The way you deal with this sort of situation where your employer is a large employer and you want to make good with them no matter what. So what I did is I listened to everything this lady had to say, beginning to end, as how this employee didn't show up to work and blah, blah, blah. And what I did is I took fault for everything. Again, I'm taking the burden off of my client and putting it on me. And the way you do that is you tell them, oh, I'm so sorry, this wasn't a match. I should have known better from the beginning. Boo, boo me, hit me with a wet noodle, all that you want to. I screwed up and I'm so sorry about that. And gee, I won't let that happen again, da, da, da. Maybe I have some other clients you may be interested in. Well, the lady heard that and she goes, well, maybe the situation wasn't quite that bad, but you're not going to bring back that client again, are you? No, I told her I wasn't going to bring back that client again. She goes, well, that's good. Well, have some other clients maybe pass them my way. So the way you go about it is you have to smell nice, be nice, and act nice, and try your best. The only thing I didn't bring this lady were flowers and candies, but you really got to smooth it over just in case you have any other clients that want that job. Also, they've heard of your company, ACBH. You don't want a bad stigma associated with your company. That's not professional. So I smoothed it over. She's not bad talking our company. And guess what? It's open. She's open to taking more employees in the future. Again, I smoothed it over by talking nice, smelling nice, and being nice.
Thanks,
simple.
Diego. I appreciate it. And I think one of the things that I've always tried to do when it comes to, a placement that went bad, and I'm trying to kind of smooth it over. I make sure that I do my work early. They talk about doing your work. That's a basketball term, doing your work early. But in here, I mean, doing your work early is when I place the client, I make sure I start cementing that relationship with the client at the very beginning. They should see me coming by on a regular basis, checking in with the employer. How are things going? If things go bad with a placement, if they don't see you until after things go bad, it's going to be very difficult to kind of fix the situation. But if they've seen you on a consistent basis, if they know you, if you've been building that relationship, they know that they've got somebody, a partner in this thing, and I think they're more likely to work with you to try and fix the situation. And then the other thing I want to mention just really quickly is, there's sometimes that a relationship with an employer can get put at risk, but there's other times that I might just mark an employer off my list. If there's employers that are not, supportive to the client, and it's not an atmosphere that is really conducive to, to my client's mental health, I'll be like, you know what? Let me just cross them, take that business card out and throw it out, because not every place is going to be a good fit, and some places just won't be for our folks, So I'm not slow to toss the card out.
Well, yeah, this particular situation, I even spotted something along the line that this just wasn't going to work. And I knew this lady was very difficult. So I from the beginning, I told this guy, you know what, if this doesn't work out, please come tell me. I didn't mean it to get this far. And he didn't do what I said I was going to do. But you know what? In the end of it, we're on a business sense, I really have to keep it professional and friendly and just smooth it over as best I can.
Hey guys, so listen, let me jump in here, and we have about 5 minutes left of your session. We can still have you all highlighted here. There's just a couple of comments here. Everybody loves your success stories and thinks you are inspiring. Beth says, what an inspiring story, Mary. And Lizelle says, hi, everyone. This has been such a great learning experience of passion and dedication shine through. Yes, you are a lively group. Okay, there's no question about that. So I have a question for you, though. I think it would be interesting for people to hear a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about how you all became a job developer. And we have about 5 minutes, so you talkers, just be aware of that, okay?
Do I have to be first again?
I don't know.
So who
You
would like
keep
to
it
go?
short. No, I think I want Veronica to go first, okay, Diego,
Yeah.
just to make sure she gets
I was going to call Veronica as well.
Okay. The question is, how did I become a job developer?
Yeah. What led you to this field, and
Okay.
how did you get here?
Well, in 2015, I joined BAC. I applied to the employment coordinator position for the BAC Valley Wellness Center in Pleasanton, and fortunately, I got the position, and that's how I started supporting clients and practicing the IPS principles.
So that's how you learned to be a job developer. That was like your first job as a job developer.
As a job developer, however, well, in the past, I was in sales too. So
okay.
I kind of had that sales marketing experience prior. So when I read the job description for that employment coordinator position, and I told myself, I can do this.
Awesome.
So fortunately, I got the position, and that was in 2015. So I was there for 3 years, and
Nice.
then I joined our team here.
How about you, Mary?
Well, I graduated from college with a,
Remember, we only have 3 minutes, Mary.
yeah, okay. No, this is key though. With a bachelor's degree in public relations. Well, it's liberal arts. And the thing is, if you graduate from college and you're an engineer, you become an engineer. If you graduate from college and become a dentist, you become a dentist. Well, what do you do with a liberal arts degree? The world is your oyster. I mean, there's 1,000,001 things. And I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a reporter. I just felt that was too hard hitting. I didn't want to go into public relations necessarily because it's very dog eat dog. It just, I had a more subtle, more nurturing side. So I read the book, What Color is Your Parachute? And by Richard Nelson Bowles. And it's like in its 15th edition. It's the job hunting guide. How do you do informational interviews? And it came out job counselor, job analyst, employment specialist, seriously. So then I started looking for jobs like that. I joined a firm that did work placement for injured workers, rehabilitation specialist company. Everybody just worked there like a year or so and quit. I was there for 5 years and became a supervisor. I really loved it. It combined sales, it combined public relations, speaking ability. It combined marketing, how to market employers, how to do research. It was like I found my oyster. That was it. Oh my gosh. It was like the light turned on, and I just ate it up with a spoon. I just loved it. I loved every second of it. They go, well, do you want to be a rehabilitation counselor? No, I want to be a job developer. That's what I want to do. Are you depressed? Are you depressed? How about a job? See, I was kind of an emotional one-trick pony, and I just loved it. I loved helping people in a nurturing way, but in a tangible way. And so that's the story of my life.
Thank you, Mary. Awesome. Okay,
Okay,
Diego.
Lisa, I just wanted, sorry.
Go ahead, Veronica.
I just wanted to add that I have a degree in communication.
Right. Yeah, thank
Sorry,
you. I
I forgot
appreciate that. All right, Diego, and then we want Rodney to get some time too, so.
Okay, very rapidly in a nutshell, I have a number of degrees. I have like 3 college degrees and I have a law background, believe it or not. I was studying law at the University of San Francisco. I was studying litigation and I needed a job. So I literally heard about this one agency called Social Vocational Services. Actually, Rodney had worked for them in Hayward that needed someone to construct labor contracts for them. So I applied for the job. I didn't have any experience doing this sort of stuff. And actually the guy who was the head of the company hired me. And I asked him, why did you hire me? He said, because I have a good attitude. And I knew how to construct labor contracts. So actually, Social Vocational Services, they didn't know when Rodney was working there. At the time I was working there, they had a lot of Vietnam veterans and that sort of stuff. That's how far back this was, who needed employment and had problems with various contracts, labor contracts, and that sort of stuff. I was about maybe in my early 20s, maybe 25 or 26 years old or something like that. And that's when I started doing job development. I became more acute as to the population who had disabilities. And I started writing labor contracts with AC Transit, the Gillig Corporation, and that sort of stuff, even with Ross Incorporated, Toys R Us, and all that. It was the funniest thing. There I was, 26 years old. I knew the CEO of Toys R Us. I knew the head of AC Transit. I knew the head of Marshalls. I knew the head of all these companies. And there I was, a kid. I
There
was
you
just this
were.
kid.
That's
And I
amazing.
just liked it. I mean, I just liked the job. The clients liked me, and the world went round and round. So
Thank you.
30 years later.
And here you are. Okay, Rodney, I know we're kind of cutting into the last little wrap-up session, but Chris and I can work around that. This is super important stuff. And I have one more important question that was posted that I want you guys to respond to. Rodney, tell us about how you became a job developer.
Okay, I will keep it brief, but I'll start by saying that the clients that I work with, I pretty much tell them all that I will never push you into a job, but I will push you into a job interview. Because I believe the job interviews are very informative. They're educational opportunities. And I use myself as an example. Back in 2009, I was invited to a job interview with Social Vocational Services, same company Diego just mentioned. And I thought about it, like, I'm not really interested in this job. I kind of looked at it online. I'm like, I don't think that's really something I want to do. But I went anyway. I was just curious. So I went anyway. And after the interview, I was like, maybe I could do that. And they offered me the position. And I went ahead and said, I talked to my wife about it. I wound up taking the job just to try something different that I'd never done before. And here I am 13 years later in the same line. I love it. This is something that there's no place else I'd want to be than to be doing job development for clients like ours. So,
Right.
I tell my clients that all the time. The only reason I'm here is because I went to a job interview to get some information and to learn more, and it changed my life.
Wow.
Well, I would say that the passion that you all have definitely comes through. There's no question about that. So I do have one more posted question here. I think it would be great for you guys to respond to. Is that there's a employment specialist that works in early psychosis, and she gets the question from employers is what kind of mental health issues or something of that nature, and she tries to be vague. But then she's concerned about, the not being clear with the employer, or if they look up her agency, and then what happens then. So how do you guys respond to that question?
I can take that question if that's okay. What I do, and of course I get some permission from the client, to disclose that, I work with people with a mental health diagnosis, and I keep it broad. So I talk to employers, and they'll inevitably say, well, where do you get these people from? And I say, well, I work with a governmental agency. We don't charge a fee. I work with people who have a mental health diagnosis. And I see them pull back like, oh my gosh. I go, well, like, I can't give you a specific diagnosis, but it's like somebody who might have depression, they get some medication, the light turns on, they feel motivated, they want to work, they want to get off of Social Security, and they go, wow, that's really great. My aunt deals with depression. Yeah, it's very common. But so what I do is I introduce mental health in that kind of general way. And then when I'm working with a client who has specific symptoms, or has a specific diagnosis, I talk about the symptoms, and I'll say, this person is very quiet, kind of shy, but they're very intelligent. So they may not be really, the big talkers in your organization or in your employee group, but they're very hardworking, very detailed. Maybe a person has Asperger's, for instance, very detailed, unswerving, very focused on the details. And they'll say, great, we have a job for a proofreader. This person sounds perfect. So whatever, but I describe the symptoms rather than the diagnosis. And if the employer can live with that, then they're not surprised when they hire the person.
Mm-hmm.
Great answer.
Thank you for that, Mary. That is a great
About it.
answer.
That's a great
Right.
answer.
And I've heard employment specialists over the years just say, you know, I just tell them I work for mental health, and I help people with mental health disabilities. And who doesn't know somebody who has a problem with depression? You know, depression is the easiest one, or anxiety is another easy one. You know, some people don't understand diagnoses like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, things of that nature. So, you know, don't mention it. You know, mention the ones that are, you know, are like, you know, in drinking water. They're very common. So I just want to thank all of you guys. Your energy and your passion just totally come through, and everybody's really responded to that. We need to wrap it up, and I need to invite my co-host Chris back on the screen here, and we're going to wrap up our conference. So thank you so much, the four of you.
Fantastic.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.